I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Yes. All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Welcome, Baruch Hashem, to the last daf of Maseches Makkos Haba'alim L'Tova. Overwhelmingly beautiful, exciting. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilsa Mishpacha Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all their shiurim and drashos this year as a zechus for Besoros Tovos for Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Iyar: Shmuel and Rabbi Karapkin, creation of the yard site of Shmuel's father, Leonard Karapkin, Lipa ben Yecheskel HaKohen Zichron Livracha. Our week of learning sponsors: Ari and Haley Lichterman, Le'ili Nishmas Haley's mother, Rachel Leah Bas Ruvain Meir Zichron Livracha. And our Daf Yomi sponsors for today. This is a beautiful one: Rebecca, Penny, Shane, and Reese Myritz, in honor of Daddy and Zaidi and everyone else completing Maseches Makkos. So beautiful. Mazel tov to Daddy, Mazel tov to Zaidi, Mazel tov Baruch Hashem. Really, really beautiful. We should just know, sometimes we don't necessarily appreciate the full impact that our learning has on those around us. Obviously, we recognize the impact that our learning has on us. But Baruch Hashem, when a mishpacha sees that their father, that their grandfather learns and plugs away and gives up precious sleep and comes early in the morning and is dedicated, the ripple effect that it has on children, on grandchildren, cannot be understated. So really beautiful. I will say, and of course, we dedicate our last half of Maseches Makkos in the schus of our precious hostages. May Chadash Baruch Hu, Hashem, bring them home, B'Shalom and B'Karav, and the schus of our holy soldiers. May they be successful b'chol ma'asei yedeim as they wage Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael's war. And may Hashem come back to their families, B'Shalom and B'Karav. Well, so with that, let us begin. We've got a lot to do today. Today's daf is Chaf Dalet 24, last daf of Maseches Makkos. We are picking up at the Gemara on Chaf Gimel Amud Beis 23b, fourth wide line in. Let's go. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Chalukin Lav Chavera Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel's friends were cholik. They disagree. Now, what did Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel say? In the Mishnah, he said that if a person is chayiv kares and you get malchus, so ultimately the malchus absolves you of the kares. So a dramatic statement. So the Gemara says, but his friends disagree with him. Amri Beirav. Tanina, we learned this. Ein dein Shabbos Lim Kippurim, Ela Shezez Dono B'dei Adam, Shezez Dono B'dei Kares. So we'll say the halacha is, the Gemara says over here, there is no distinction between Shabbos and Yom Kippur, meaning both Shabbos and Yom Kippur have severe punishments. What's the fundamental distinction? Shabbos, if you violate Shabbos, it's Misa in a Beis Din, right? And if you violate Yom Kippur, ultimately it's Kares. So the Gemara says, Vim Isa. Now, if it's true that Malchus actually takes care of Kares, right? And every single time you're chayiv Kares, you also get Malchus. But under you get Malchus, but Malchus goes in and absolves you of Kares. If that's the case, the Gemara says, Idi v'idi b'dei Adamu. Then every Kares is also called b'dei Adam, right? Because every Kares is getting Malchus. Malchus is administered b'dei Adam. If that's the case, then Yom Kippur should be b'dei Adam, just like Shabbos is. So Gemara says, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Omer Haman Rabbi Yitzchaki. Whose opinion does this reflect? Rabbi Yitzchak. What does Rabbi Yitzchak say? The Amar Malchus b'chayve krisus leka. Okay, there's another opinion. There's Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak holds that ultimately, again, there are no malchus by chayve krisus. Tizanya, we actually saw this before. Rabbi Yitzchak, Omer chayve krisus b'chlal hayu. In general, again, we would have assumed that because of the juxtaposition of the psukim, that all chayve krisus ultimately, again, would be subject to malchus. That would have been our automatic default assumption. Says the Gemara, Valami Yatsa Kares Bachoso, right? We saw this before. Remember, in general, there's an umbrella statement about that immorality is punished by Kares. Then the Torah goes out of its way to say that Halocha Lamaisa, so incest with one's sister is punishable by Kares. Why is that singled out? Gemara Saladona Bakares, love Malchus, to teach you that you're only chayiv Kares and not Malchus. And once the Gemara singles out Achoso, sister, for Kares and no Malchus, what does that teach me? That all other kares bearing prohibitions also don't have malchus. Okay, Rav Ashi says no. If you the Tim Rabbanon, it could even be the Rabbanon. The Gemara says like this: Ze ikar zedona b'di Adam, the ze ikar zedona b'di Shamayim. All right, you're right. You may be getting malchus for violation of Yom Kippur. But the distinction that the Gemara is making over here is Shabbos, the ikar punishment is bidei Adam. The ikar punishment is bidei Adam. And by Yom Kippur, the ikar punishment is bidei Shamayim. Yes, you get Makkos, but that's not the ikra of the punishment. Amrav Adabar Ava Amrav. Halacha Rav Chananya ben Gamliel. Rabbi said this is incredible. The halacha is like Rav Chananya ben Gamliel. Now we'll say, now what meaning what? That halacha l'maisa, every kares prohibition brings with it Makkos, but not only that, that ultimately again, when you get Makkos, what happens? You are absolved of the kares. So I just want to point out how incredible that is. Right? When you think about the idea about when we yearn for the Beis HaMikdash and what we're yearning for in Geula, so of course there's the Beis HaMikdash itself, which will be awesome, incredible, beautiful, a great glue for Klal Yisrael. But there's also like a number of other institutions that come along with the Beis HaMikdash. And one of those, of course, is Sanhedrin, organized Beis Din system. Rabbi said, do you realize how incredible it would be to get Makkos? Now let me clarify that statement for just a moment, right? Some of us have done things that make us chayiv kares, that are just an unfortunate reality. And we could do tshuva for it. But at the same time, I may not know if I'm absolved or not. How do I know if this is in general? Let me again clarify that. Part of the process of tshuva is believing that your tshuva has been accepted. There's an emunah in tshuva itself. And if don't believe shalom, I have to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepts it. But still, like, it would, there's still some of that lingering doubt. Imagine for a moment a person did something that is kares bearing prohibition. I go to Beis Din, I give my Makkos, and I walk out. I guarantee you, how do you walk out of Beis Din? Smiling. I'm not saying you're saying, yes, sir, may I have another, right? But I guarantee you, absolutely walking out smiling. Why? Because there is no greater simcha in life than absolution. There is no greater simcha in life than forgiveness. The same way that when we walk out of Yom Kippur, you're exhausted, but you're smiling ear to ear, the neshama is smiling ear to ear, because I know that I've been forgiven. That's Makkos. So imagine that. No matter how severe the sin, you go in, get your punishment, and then Baruch Hashem, you're good. Incredible. Something for us to look forward to. Again, not to look forward to doing something that is a kares bearing prohibition and being chayiv Makkos, but if I have some of that already on my shoulders, the ability to be cleansed by getting those punishments, part of Geula as well. Incredible. So Rabbi Yosef. So this is great. Rabbi Yosef says, Man salak le'ila asa va'amar. How can you say that the halacha follows Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel? Right? Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel says, if you did a kares prohibition, right? You ate on Yom Kippur, and then you got Makkos, you're forgiven. So this Rabbi Yosef says, I don't understand. It's kares. Who went up to Shamayim, conversed with God, and found out that that's true? Kares is death at the hands of heaven, right? Unfortunately, again, loss of future generations. So that's in God's hands. You could, if you want to tell me that if you get Makkos takes care of Nisas Beis Din. Okay, I could talk to Beis Din. We could clear that out. But kares is handled by God. So Rabbi Yosef says, who went up to Shamayim, conversed with God, and heard from God that yes, if you get Makkos, you're absolved from kares. So the Gemara says, Amar Abaye, Elhadon Rabbi Shmuel Levi, Shlosh Dvarim Asu Beis Din Shel Mata Veskimu Beis Din Shel Malo. Abaye said, well, 1 second. What about the following story? Rabbi Shmuel Levi said there are 3 things that were done by Beis Din Shel Mata, right? The Beis Din here, Chazal, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with them. So again, Abaye says, Man Salach Le'ila Va'asa Va'amar. Who went up to Shamayim and ultimately again found out that Shamayim agreed with what they did here in Beis Din on this earth. Ela Krai Kadashinan, Hachanami Krai Kadashinan. So understand, Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel's statement that Makkos atones for kares is not just simply a beautiful conjecture. It's a drasha on psukim. So just like these 3 things that Beis Din did, they knew that HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with them. Why? Because they darshan the psukim. So to Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel also darshans the psukim. So now the Gemara is intrigued. What are those 3 things that Beis Din Shel Mata did, that Beis Din Shel Malo agreed with? Is beautiful. Gufam Rabbi Shmuel Levi. Shlosh Dvarim Asu Beis Din Shel Mata V'Skim Beis Din Shel Malo Al Yadam Elohim. These are the 3 things. Number 1, it's a beautiful Gemara. Mikra Megillah introduced by Beis Din Shel Mata, Chazal, and Kadosh Baruch Hu agreed with it. She'ilas Shalom B'Shem, greeting each other with the name of God. And lastly, V'havas Meiser. They're bringing Meiser. Say now, Havas Meiser, Rashi points out, really refers to 3 things. 1 done by Ezra, 2 done by King Chizkiyahu. The one done by Ezra is that when the Leviim did not go ahead and come back for the second, right? The Levim en masse did not come back with the Jews to rebuild the second temple. As a result, Ezra went ahead and penalized them. Ezra penalized them and took away their Meiser Rishon and gave it to the Kohanim. That's one. Number two, a little earlier in history, Chizkiyahu told the people, bring your Meiser to the Beis HaMikdash. Even though you don't have to, right? You can bring your Meiser, you give your Meiser wherever you want. He said, let's create a lishka, a chamber, and have all of the Meiser of Klal Yisrael deposited there. And number three, Chizkiyahu decreed that you should have to give Meiser on vegetables also. Even though, again, Midaraisa, you don't have to give them vegetables, Chizkiyahu said give them vegetables. Those are the three things. So the Gemara says like this. So now these are three things introduced by Beis Din Shalmata, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with them. So the Gemara is going to go through all of them. Mikra Megillah. So what Mikra Megillah? The Siv, Kimu v'kiblu ha'Yehudim. The pasuk says Kimu v'kiblu is beautiful. Kaimu lamalo or Kimu lamalo, Kaimu lamala, Masha kiblu lamata. In the heavens, they accepted that which was accepted down here on the earth. Beautiful. Shelas Shalom, greeting each other, because we must remember again, greeting each other with the name of Hashem, or for that matter, saying things like Baruch Hashem, really shouldn't be done, right? If you think about it. If you think about it, because at the end of the day, it's using God's name a lot. Generally, we try to treat the name of Hashem with a profound sense of reverence and respect. Part of the way we do that is not just like bantering it around. Yet, again, it was introduced. One of the first time we see it, one of the first time we see it is Boaz comes from Beis Lechem, right? He comes to his field, he sees his workers working, and he says to them, Hashem imachem, Hashem is with you. Now, one of the first times we see someone greet other people with the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Furthermore, the pasuk says, Hashem imcha gibar hachayim. Now, that's by Gidon. That's by Gidon earlier on, right? A little bit earlier on, Hashem imcha gibar hachayo. Hashem is with you. So the Malach used the name of Hashem in greeting Gidon. So the Gemara says, why do you need the second pasuk? If Boaz did it, that's enough of a proof. So the Gemara says, Boaz just did this on his own, but Lav Dafka that HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with it. Boaz decided to do this. Tashma va'omer Hashem imcha gibar hachayo. So pretty much here's one thing you could count on. If an angel does it, pretty much you know God's on board with it, right? So therefore, again, if Boaz would have done it, okay, so Boaz did it, but who's to say that Boaz had divine permission, right? Perhaps Boaz just did it of his own volition, so comes along the Malach does it as well. That's a clear indication that Kadosh Baruch Hu is good with this practice. Havas Meiser, what's the case of Havas Meiser? So remember again, I will say, it's three things. Here the Gemara is really focusing on one. T'chsiv, heviu es kol ha'ma'aser el beis ha'otzer, v'teref bebeisi, ubechanuni no bezos amar Hashem tzivakos, im lo eftach lachem es arubos hashamayim varikosi lachem, bracha ad belidai. And I will say, now this is absolutely beautiful. What Chizkiyahu was doing was as follows. Chizkiyahu says to Klal Yisrael, bring your Meiser to the Beis HaMikdash. Gather it. Let HaKadosh Baruch Hu see the generosity of Klal Yisrael. Right? Can you imagine that? You have a chamber in the Beis HaMikdash that is filled with the Meiser of Klal Yisrael, representing the generosity, and the Navi says, bring all your Meiser here, and Amar Hashem Sevakos, sorry, Bechanuni Nabazos means literally again, test. So we started early, right? Test me, right? Test me. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, test me. Bechanuni na bezos, Amar Hashem Tzavakos, I will open up the windows of the heavens to you, and I will shower upon you bracha ad beli dai. So we'll say this is such a beautiful moment. So Chizkiyahu is saying, like the Navi is saying, Kadosh Baruch Hu, if Klal Yisrael, if you show Kadosh Baruch Hu how generous you are, Hashem says, you want to see generosity? I'll show you generosity. I will say, by the way, this is also one of the concepts that you are allowed to test HaKadosh Baruch Hu with tzedakah. Right? Generally, you're not allowed to go ahead and make bargains with God. You can't say, God, I'll put on tefillin this morning if you will let me, land that account in my business. That's not the way it works. The only area in life where you are allowed to go and test HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with tzedakah. You could say, Ribono shel olam, I am willing to be exceedingly generous, even generous beyond what I'm comfortable to do, on the condition that you give it back to me. That's ubechanuni nabez. Hashem says, come on, bring it. Bring it. Hashem Baruch Hu. It's not a direct quote, but you understand, right? Bring it on, right? Test me. You be more generous than you think you're capable of doing, and test me. I'll give it back to you and then some. Incredible. So the Gemara says, My ad belidai. What does it mean that Hashem will shower bracha upon you ad belidai? Literally, again, ad belidai means until there is not enough. So what does that mean? Amar Rami Rav ad shivlu sifsosechem milomar dai. There'll be so much bracha that your lips will tire from saying enough. Your lips will tire from saying enough. Such beautiful bracha. I will say, so again, so here you see that Chizkiyahu's whole point was, Klal Yisrael, let's be more generous. And you'll see, the more generous you are, the more you give, the more you get. I will say, it's important to understand, you cannot necessarily say that with other mitzvahs, right? It's quite possible I'll do a mitzvah, and it's beautiful, and it's incredible, it's fantastic. Lav dafka, I'm going to see a windfall from it. Tzedakah is the one mitzvah, where if I push myself, I can say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm pushing myself, I need you to give it back to me, and then some. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, it's a divine promise. Test me, and you will see I will open up the windows of Shamayim, I will give you bracha ad belidai, ad sheshiv lo sesosechim lo mardai. Not a lot, so much abundance that you'll say, too much. Incredible. Ruach HaKadosh, there are three situations, three places where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence was manifest. Now, again, Rashi points out over here, Hofia, Nigla v'hochiach b'shas hatzorech. That in other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made himself, so to speak, apparent, not visible, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence was present at these pivotal moments. When was it? The Gemara says, "Bebeis dino shel Shem." The Beis, we'll explain in today's case. Beis din shel Shem, Beis dino shel Shmuel haramasi, Beis din of Shmuel, or Beis dino shel Shlomo. Okay, what are the cases? The Beis dino shel Shem dichsiv vayaker Yehuda vayomer sad kamimen. Let's remember again the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Tamar is pregnant. Now she's pregnant from Yehuda, but she was disguised at the time that they were intimate with one another. She's pregnant. Everyone thinks she committed a form of adultery, and therefore they're ready to kill her. So what happens? She will not embarrass Yehuda in public, but she does have his staff and his ring. And she says, the father of my child is the owner of this staff and ring. So what happens? Yehuda recognizes what happens. And he says, she was wiser than me. She was right. Because remember again, Yehuda was delaying giving her to his youngest son, Shelah, because he thought that she was the problem, right? He thought that she's the reason why Er and Onan died, without really realizing that Er and Onan died because of their own averis. So Yehuda said, "Sad kamimenu." The Gemara says, "1 second, Mina Yada, how did Yehuda know that Tamar was pregnant with his child? After all, Dilma kihechi de azal ihu ligaba." Now let's be clear, she did dress up as a harlot. So who's to say that the same way that she had relations with him, she didn't have relations with another man? So who says that Yehuda is the father? Yatsa baskal va'amra mimenu yatsu kivushim. It's incredible. So at that moment, the baskal came out from Shamayim and said, for me, these hidden things were choreographed. In other words, the baskal makes an appearance at the Beis Din of Shem. Now, here's what's interesting. The Baskal was not the decisor in the Beis Din, right? Because Lo Bashamayim here. At the end of the day, Baskals don't adjudicate cases. But Yehuda hears the Baskal, and that leads Yehuda to say, Tzad kamimeni. She's right. The Gemara says, I don't understand. Right. So what happened Beis Din Shel Shmuel? Dichsev, Hineni anu bi neged Hashem v'neged Mashiach as sharmi lakachti. So we'll say, this is incredible. This is when Klal Yisrael wanted a melech. They wanted a king. So they come to Shmuel. Now what's very interesting about this is as follows. They come to Shmuel, they ask for a king. Shmuel is offended. Because Shmuel essentially says, like, why? What's the problem with our current situation, right? Did I do something wrong? Did I take something from them? Did I exploit my position to somehow for my own self-advancement? I didn't do anything. Vayomer lo hashaksanu v'loretz useinu vayomer od Hashem vayomer eid Hashem veid mishicho kilo metzasim biyadi mu'uma. And Shmuel says, essentially, you're my witness, God is my witness. I did not take anything that I was not entitled to from Klal Yisrael. Vayomer eid. Vayomer eid. So Gemara says, Vayomer boy. Now it says, I'm a witness. But it should say, we are witnesses. In other words, the Klal Yisrael was affirming that Shmuel never exploited his position. Why does it say it in the singular? To which the Gemara says, Yatsa Baskol va'amra, ani eid b'davar zeh. Incredible. The Baskol came out and said to Klal Yisrael, I know that Shmuel has been a trustworthy servant. He has never exploited his position. And the truth is, the request for a new king or for a king is a shtickle inappropriate. Remember again, it was also a premature request. That's why Klal Yisrael didn't get a Davidic king, right? They got Shaul, because he was only a stopgap. Incredible. Next, the Beis Din Shel Shlomo. When did Hashem make an appearance in the Beis Din of Shlomo? T'chsiv vayan hamelech vayomer tnu lanu es hayeled hachai v'ameis lo tenisu ki hi imo. I'll say this is the famous Maisa of the two women who come before Shlomo HaMelech, each claiming that they are the mother of the baby. So what happens? Remember again the famous story, Shlomo says, cut the baby in half, and then one of them says, no, don't cut the baby in half, give her to the other one. And Shlomo says, oh, that's the real mother, right? The one who exhibited the compassion, that's the real mother. So Mina Yada, so how did he know? Dilma, Iaruma Me'arma. So we'll say, see, to me, right, when we look at this story, we say to ourselves, this seems like a pretty easily exploitable situation, right? That who's to say that the woman who wasn't the mother recognized that if she played the part of the mother and exuded a tremendous amount of compassion, that she'd be claiming the mother. So maybe she was just playing the system a little bit. To which the Gemara says, Yatsa Baskol va'amra hi imo. A Baskol came out and said to Shlomo, that's the mother. Amar Rava. Mimai. So the Gemara says. Now the Gemara points out, going back to Yehuda for just a moment. How do we know that? So Mimai Dilma Yehuda Kevan dechashev Yarchev Yomi ve'Sami dechazinon mechaskinon. Mechaskinon, lo mechaskinon. To which the Gemara says, so I'm sorry. So Amar Rava Mimai Dilma Yehuda Kevan dechashev Yarchev Yomi ve'Sami dechazinon mechaskinon. So to which the Gemara says, so I don't understand. Maybe Yehuda just went ahead and actually calculated out the months. In other words, maybe he just did the math on all of this. How do we know that halacha l'maisa again? To which the Gemara says, lo chazinon, lo mechaskinon. To which the Gemara says, because if you don't see something, in other words, maybe someone else also had relations with her and the timeline worked out. If you don't see something happen, then you can't assume that it occurred. All right, to Shmuel Nami, Kulu Yisrael Kari Lehu B'Lashin Yechidi. And by Shmuel also, the Gemara is just pointing out over here, maybe it wasn't the Baskol. Maybe again, Yehuda just did the math. The problem just is, even if he did the math, that doesn't necessarily say that someone else wasn't also coming to Eretz along at the same time. Shmuel, Nami Kuli Yisrael Kari Lehu B'Lashin Yechidi. Now again, both remember again, the raya that a Baskol came out by the Beis Din of Shmuel was because it says Vayomer Eid. Maybe it's just referring to Klal Yisrael in the singular form. D'chsiv Yisrael Nosha B'Hashem. So in other words, so it's not a raya. It's not a raya. To which the Gemara says, Shlomo Nami Midaha Ka Mirachma V'Hadelo Mirachma. Further, even Shlomo. Maybe Shlomo just went ahead and using logic said the one who exuded the greater compassion obviously was the mother, and the one who was ready to cut up the baby wasn't the mother. The point the Gemara is making over here is you're inferring that there was a Baskol, but you have no explicit proof that there was a Baskol. To which the Gemara says, you're right, Ella Gemara. You're right. The psukim can be interpreted in different ways. We have a tradition. We have a Mesorah that in each of these three cases, the Baskol came and intervened. The Baskol said that ultimately, again, Yehuda, it's your baby. The Baskol came and told Klal Yisrael, Shmuel HaNavi never exploited his position, and the Baskol came and said to Shlomo, that is the mother. Incredible. So Dar Shabi Smalai, ridiculous Gemara. So Sheish Me'os V'Shloshes Mitzvos Ne'emru Lo Moshe. So we'll say there are 600, right? 613 mitzvahs given to Moshe Rabbeinu. Give it to Moshe Rabbeinu. Shlosh me'os v'shishim v'chamesh lavin. Right there. Sorry. Shesh me'os u'shlosh mitzvos. 630 mitzvos were given from Moshe Rabbeinu, right? At Har Sinai to give to Klal. So shlosh me'os v'shishim v'chamesh lavin. 365 prohibitions, corresponding ultimately again to the days of the year, and 248 positive mitzvos corresponding to the major parts of a person's body. Now, say, by the way, I'll point out, why is it that there's 365 lavim corresponding to the days of the year, right? What's the pshat with that? So perhaps it goes back to yesterday's Gemara, which was the top of Chav Gimel. Remember what the Gemara said? The Gemara said, "Hayoshev v'lo avar avera, nosnin lo schar ka'ose mitzvah." That again, if a person musters up the courage not to violate an avera, he is given reward as if he has performed a mitzvah. Perhaps the idea of 365 lavin corresponding to the days of the year represent the following yisod. Even if all I'm able to do over the course of a day is muster up enough courage not to sin and to resist temptation, that's a successful day. Obviously, that's not my goal. That's not my goal, right? Abstaining from Aveira is not my end goal, right? Sur Meira is definitely an incredible start. But my goal is truly the Kumaseh, right? Aseh Tov. That ultimately, again, is my goal. But Lamaise, even if at the end of the day, the only thing I could look at, what did I do today? I resisted the temptation to sin. That is godless. That is accomplishment. And that is meaningful. Hence, 365 Losases corresponding to the 365 days of the year. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Amar from the Mikra, what's the pasuk? Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha. So the pasuk says, literally Moshe Rabbeinu commanded us Torah morasha. It is an inheritance. Says the Gemara. So Torah gematria top of Chavdalid shis mea vechad sar. It's very interesting. So the gematria of Torah is 611. So the Gemara says, now, but what about the other two? Anochi v'lo yeh lechem pi hagvura shaman. It's beautiful. The first two dibros, remember again, we heard from Hashem. So Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu gave us 611 because the Ribono Shel Olam himself gave us the first two. Beautiful, beautiful. But David, Shabbos, I say now watch this. And this, by the way, might be one of the most incredible Gemaras in all of Shas. There's 613 mitzvahs. 613 mitzvahs. That's a lot of mitzvahs. It's a lot of mitzvahs. And there was a recognition throughout the ages that sometimes I need to consolidate, not an observance, I want to be clear, right? But I need to consolidate, like theologically or philosophically. What are the core components that I need to wrap my head around? So, David ve'amidan alachat esrei. David HaMelech said, the truth is, there are 11 core principles which really capture 613 mitzvahs. So, you know what I say? Obviously, you have to observe all 613 mitzvahs. David is saying is, how can I consolidate so people understand the theological, philosophical, and spiritual underpinnings of Yiddishkeit? So David HaMelech consolidated it into 11 mitzvahs. What are they? And again, amazingly enough, they are captured in a capital of Tehillim D'chsiv. Mizmor LeDavid. As the pasuk says, Mizmor LeDavid. This is again Perek Tesvav, chapter 15 in Tehillim. Mizmor LeDavid. Mi yagor be'ohalecha, mi yishkan bahar kodshecha. And I will say the power of this capital is David HaMelech saying like this: who is the one who can live in your tent? Who can dwell on your holy mountain? Or in other words, what David HaMelech is saying is, what are the qualities that are necessary for a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What do you need in order to come close to God? To live with God, to live by God? What do you need? I both say, we sometimes don't appreciate the profundity of Sefer Tehillim, but literally, again, it's a guidebook for life. So what are the qualities that you need? Here we go. The Gemara says, Holech Tamim, walk with completion or simplicity. We'll define what all these means. Pa'al tzedek, do tzedek. Dover emes bilabavo, speak truth in your heart. Lo ragal al lishono, don't let any falsehood be on your tongue. Lo asalere ehura, don't do bad to other people. V'cherpa lo nasa al kravo, do not visit degradation upon those who are close to you. So nivze be'einav nimas, a rasha is despicable in my eyes. Ve'esirei Hashem yichabed, and I respect those who revere God. Nishpa lahara v'lo yamir. Ultimately, we'll see exactly what that means. That he will swear to his detriment and will not exchange. Kaspa lo nasan beneshech, doesn't lend with interest. V'shochad anaki lo lakach, and he does not go ahead and take a bribe even for the innocent. O se'ila, one who lives up to these principles, lo yimov the olam, will never falter. And I will say, by the way, I just want to point out, we could spend 3 hours just dissecting that list of qualities. Because Zalman says, you want to live a successful life? These 11 things. That's it. Now the Gemara goes through them. Holech Tamim, that doesn't go through it so exhaustively, but Holech Tamim, what does it mean ultimately again to be a Holech Tamim? Ze Avram. That refers to Avram Avinu D'chsiv. His Halech Lefanai V'yeh Tamim. So we'll say what that means is just on a simple level. What does it mean to be Tamim? It means to put your trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's it. Like Tamim Tiyam Hashem Elokech, when the Pasuk says be complete with Hashem, what does that mean? Rashi says, Lo tachkar achar ha'asidos. Don't worry about what's going to happen. Just put your faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It means an emunah pshuta. An emunah pshuta, a simple faith. Hashem has got my back, and therefore I'm going to do what is necessary. Next, Poal Tzedek, Kagon Abba Chilkiyo. So I'll say this Abba Chilkiya. Oh, how I wish we actually had time to do this Gemara. Abba Chilkiya, I'll say, is the Gemara in Maseches Tainis. Abba Chilkiya was the grandson of Choni HaMa'agel. And the Gemara talks about, again, how Abba Chilkiya, so what does it mean, Poal Tzedek? Poal Tzedek, Abba Chilkiya, everything he did was measured. Everything he did was methodical. Nothing Abba Chilkiya did was random. So Poal Tzedek means, I will say, to live a life of mindfulness. You know, so often in life we do things, we say things, and like the pieces of my life don't fit together to form one comprehensive tapestry or picture. Poal Tzedek means that what I do makes sense. The way that I live makes sense. The actions I engage in make sense. Everything I do is thought out and methodical. Next, Dover Emes Pilavavo. Speak truth in heart. The Gemara says, who is that? Gon, Rav Safra, like Rav Safra. Okay, Rashi points out over here that the Gemara tells a story over here that Rav Safra once had an object to sell, and a Gentile came to him while he was davening Shemona Esrei and says, I want to buy your object. I see you're asking $100. And Rav Safra didn't answer. So the guy thought that he was playing hardball, right? So he says, okay, fine, I'll give you 150. And the guy starts competing with himself until like he's at some exorbitant price. Rav Safra finishes Shemona Esrei, and he says, I'll take the 100 because that's what I was willing to accept. So we'll say the Gemara goes ahead and says, that's Dover Emes Pilavavo. Sometimes the only person who knows the truth is me because it's in my heart. The ability to live the truth, even when no one else knows it but you, that's a high level. The Gemara says, again, no falsehood came. Ze Yaakov Avinu d'chsev, ulai imusheni aviv v'hayi be'einav kimisaseya. So ultimately, again, Yaakov Avinu, again, focused on the truth. Lo asal ra'ehu ra'a. What does it mean? Again, never did anything bad to someone else. Shelo yarad lo umnos chavero. I did not go ahead and try to take away my friend's parnasa. And again, I did not visit degradation upon my relatives. That is one who keeps his relatives close. Now, I both say, so what does this mean? What does this mean? Rashi says, so what Rashi seems to indicate is it sounds like over here that if you heard your relative being degraded, you did not just simply, stand by and listen. But perhaps what it could also mean is like this. Sometimes an interesting dynamic in relationships. Sometimes the things we do to our relatives, we would never do to total strangers, right? We take liberties with our relatives that we would never do. So the Gemara says over here, take care of your mishpacha. Take care of your mishpacha. Sometimes we mistreat our mishpacha in such profound ways, and I would never do this to someone else, but yet with my own family, I do it. So the Gemara says sometimes you have to take extra care to take care of those who are closest to you. Incredible. Nivze be'einav nimas. So what does it mean? Nivze Chizkiyahu HaMelech shegira atzmos abav mita shel. This refers to Chizkiyahu, who again took his father's bones. His father, remember, was Achaz. We learned about Achaz in Parak Achelik in Sanhedrin, right? So Chizkiyahu took his father's bones, his father's remains, and he dragged them in the street. He was doing that in order to repudiate the idolatry of his father. And he honors those who revere Hashem. Shavat Melech Yehuda. Shebeshasha Eroah Talmid Chacham Haya Omer Mikiso Umechabko Umenashko V'Kora Lo Avi Rebbe Mari. So beautiful. And every Yoshafat, the king, would see a Talmid Chacham, he'd run over to him, hug him, kiss him, call him Rebbe, Mari, Avi. Beautiful. Nishpa Harav Lo Yamer, Rabbi Yochanan. Then Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan was once invited to the house of the Reish Galusa to eat. He did not want to eat, so he made up a story. He said, I'm fasting. Even once he left the house of the Reish Galusa, he continued fasting. Why? Because since he said, I'm fasting, he wanted to be true to his word. Incredible. So to take your word seriously. Kaspa lo nasan beneshach, doesn't lend on interest. Afilu beribis oved kochavim. He doesn't even lend with interest to non-Jews. Non-Jews. Now, both say that obviously is a very high level of midas chasidus, because what that's saying is like this. Both say in general, it's very difficult to maintain two different systems of behaviors, right? One towards this group and one towards another group. That lack of consistency often leads to erosion of standards in all areas. So therefore, again, as Kasmal Nassan recognizes, if I want to be honest in business with Jews, I have to be honest in business with everyone. There has to be just simply one standard with which I conduct myself. And ultimately doesn't take a bribe. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi. So we'll say the story that Rashi points out over here. Rabbi Yossi had a field, and he had a sharecropper. The sharecropper brought him Rabbi Shmuel's portion 1 day early. 1 day early. So the sharecropper said, I have a din Torah with you today anyway, so I figured since I was coming, I would bring you your portion. Now, remember again, that's not a bribe. Why is it not a bribe? Because Rabbi Shmuel was entitled to this anyway. But since it was brought a day early, he felt that even that little bit would skew his judgment. Okay, Ose'ela, Gemara says, Ksiv Ose'ela lo yimot li'olam. If you do these things, you will never falter. Kesher Rabbi Gamliel, when Gamliel got to this pasuk, he began to cry. Why? So the inference from the pasuk is if you do all of these things, you won't falter. Both say that's a lot of things. That's a lot of things. These 11 things are major things. So I have to do all of these things and I won't falter, which the inference from this is, if I don't do all of them, I will falter. That's overwhelming. To which the Gemara says, it doesn't say you have to do all of them. Rather, what does it say? It doesn't say osa kol eila. It says osa eila. Why? Dilo temachi. If you think about this just a moment. Ksiv kraken is another pasuk. Al tetamu b'chol eila. The pasuk says, do not defile yourself with all of these things. B'chol eila. Hasanami hanogeh b'chol eilu d'mintam. So what? It's only if you touch all the shratzim that you become tamei. B'chad d'minayu lo. If you touch one of them, you're not. Obviously, that's not the case. Ella lav ba'achas mikol eila. You see from here, kol eila. Kol Eilu can mean one. Hachanami ba'achas mikol Eilu. So I'll say, David HaMelech was saying, obviously the ideal is to possess all 11 of these traits. But even if you just possess some of them, that gives you the strength to lead a successful life. But 11 is still a lot. Ba Yishayo ve'midin al sheish. Yishayo further consolidated the list. He took it down from 11 to 6. What were his 6? Tichsiv holich tzedakos. Dover Misharim. So again, one who walks in tzedakos. Dover, again, we'll define him. Dover Misharim. Mois bebetza me'ashkos. Nora kapav mitmoch b'shochad. Otem ozno mishmoa damim. Otsem eino mera ospira. Okay, so what are all these? First of the widest line. Holich tzedakos. Walks in righteousness. Ze Avram Avinu dechsiv. Ki adativ leman asher yitzaveh. Shabbos say what this sounds like over here is ourselves. Ose. Holich tzedakos means not only one who himself walks in the ways of righteousness, but one who instructs his family to do the same. I lead my family in a particular direction. That's holech tzedakos. I myself go, and I also lead my family. Of course, as we always speak about, the best way to lead your family is how? By example. If you're walking a certain path, Emirat Hashem, hopefully that models for your children to walk that same path as well. V'dover meisharim, zeh she'eno maknit pnei chaver b'rabim. What's dover meisharim? I don't embarrass my friend in public. Mois bebetza me'ashkos. What is literally, again, I'm repulsed by thievery and inappropriate business. But Kigon Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. That's Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, as we mentioned before. So the Gemara says, Noar kapav mitmoch b'shochad. Ultimately, again, I shake out my hands from being involved in bribery. Kigon Rabbi Shmuel ben Yossi. That's what I mentioned before as well. Oten ozdam mishma damim. Ultimately, I literally close my ears from hearing damim. Ultimately, I don't hear the disparagement of a Talmid Chacham and remain silent. In other words, if I hear someone disparaging a Talmid Chacham, I speak up. The Gemara says, Kigon, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, like Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. I will say, Rashi points out over here, the story of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, who died. When he died, his body did not decompose. His family we saw this Gemara, his family kept him in the attic. His family kept him in the attic because they felt that since his body was not decomposing, one day his wife went up to the attic. Rashi points out she saw a worm coming out of his ear. She thought that his body was decomposing. He appeared to her that night in a dream and he said, no, my body's fine. The worm out of the ear was a punishment because one time I heard someone disparaging a Talmid Chacham and I didn't say something. Now you can infer from that generally, whenever he heard rabbinic disparagement, he absolutely stood up for the Talmid Chacham. Incredible. So what does it mean? I close my eyes from looking at negative things. That refers to avoiding looking at women when they're doing the laundry. Now again, where would women launder the clothing? By the river. But by the river, what they would do is they would pull up their dresses in order so the dresses shouldn't become wet. So a person who sees a woman with her legs exposed, obviously it causes hirhurim, it causes inappropriate thoughts. So a person who is careful with what they look at. Ksiv hu miromim yishkon. A person who lives up to these ideals ultimately again will live in the highest of highs. Incredible. So both say ba micha v'midin al shalosh. So still that's 6. That's still 6, right? So David HaMelech had 11. Yeshayahu has 6. And again, both say you see the overlap. No one's really introducing new ideas over here. They're just consolidating. Micha comes along and further consolidates it with 3. Tichsiv higid lecha adam ma tovu ma Hashem dorish mimcha. What is good and what does Hashem want from you? So Micha says, Kiyim asos mishpat, do justice. V'ahavas chesed, love chesed, v'atznei leches im Hashem Elokecha. Right? Ultimately, again, and walk with humility or modesty. Walk with humility. Asos mishpat. What does it mean? Asos mishpat. Zehadin means literally be a just person. Be a just person. The Gemara says, Avas chesed zegnilas chasadim. Be a person of chesed. As well say, sometimes again, you might think that justice takes it from chesed. So a yid has to be both just and charitable. V'atznei leches. That ultimately again refers to helping to bury the dead and helping to marry off someone. I will say now, what does this mean? So again, remember, generally burying the dead and weddings are public events. Yet even with those public events, what happens? Cheshbon Baruch Hu says, be modest. Be modest. So the Gemara says, all the more so things that are done privately, you have to be modest as well. So the Maharsha points out here, what does this mean? Be modest with weddings and funerals. What it means is like this. Remember, the Maharsha understands it is, if you're helping financially with these things, don't broadcast your involvement in it. Which in general, again, be tsanua, be modest in the way that you do. So you're helping someone make a chasana, you're helping with a levaya. Be modest, even though those are public events, be modest with your involvement. So I'll say, really incredible. So you begin to see the list really consolidate. So Micha is saying 3 things. Make sure that you're living a life that is just, that is correct. Make sure that you are involved in chesed, and make sure that you are modest and humble in the way that you conduct your life. Those are the 3 pillars. Good. Chazer Yeshayahu, V'midan Shtayim. Yeshayahu further consolidates the list. 2 things. Shneimar, Kamar Hashem, Shamru Mishpat, Va'asut Tzedakah. Consolidates it into 2. Live a life of justice and chesed. Ba'amos v'midan alachas. Amos comes 1 thing. Shneimar, Kamar Hashem leBeis Yisrael, Darshuni. Hashem says to Beis Yisrael, seek me out. Seek me out. So we'll say, what's the 1 thing? What's the 1 thing? Seek out a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Gemara says, maybe Darshuni means Darshuni, learn me out, and it refers to all the Torah. Rather, I will say again, I just want to be clear, just as we get to this last moment, dramatic moment over here. So remember, what's happening over here is you have to keep all 613 mitzvahs. But a lot of times, what I just want to know is, what are the core principles that Hashem needs me to engage in order to be a spiritually successful individual? That's what these lists represent, right? So again, and we go through this until we finally come to Habakkuk. Habakkuk says it all comes down to 1 thing. Habakkuk ve'amidan al acha, shneimar v'tzadik be'emunaso yichya. Listen, do you want to know what all Yiddishkeit comes down to? All Yiddishkeit comes down to 1 thing, emunah. Emunah. If you have emunah, everything else flows from that. If you have emunah, everything else stems from that. Sadik be'emunaso yichya. That's what it is. Because if you have emunah, Rabosai, then ultimately, again, you have all of these other qualities. If you have emunah, everything else flows from that. And especially what kind of emunah? An emunah pshuta, a simple emunah. A simple emunah that says, Hashem, I love you, I'm yours. I love you, I'm yours. Tell me what it is that you need. I am your kli, I am your vessel. Fill me up with your bracha, that's what I ask of you. Give me koach, and I am yours to execute whatever it is that needs to be done. That's it. That's it. So the Gemara goes weiter. Shnei Amar, Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, Arba Gzeros Kazer Moshe Rabbeinu. So by the way, I just want to point out, it's like one of the most dramatic Gemaras, like in the entire Shas. And I was like, okay, let's move on. Right? And I just want to point out, and again, we're not doing these Gemaras justice, these Gemaras require, but again, I will say, if you want to understand all of Yiddishkeit in one phrase, Tzadik Bemunaso Yichya. That's it. That's it. I will say, because again, and by the way, David HaMelech says this also. What does David HaMelech say? And it's good to know, because it's almost Elul. Achos sha'alti me'es Hashem osavakesh shifti beveis Hashem. One thing. What's the one thing? Shifti beveis, to dwell in the house of Hashem. What does it mean to dwell in the house of Hashem? Emunah. I just want to be close to you. I just want to be close to you. Va'ani kirvas elokim li tov. At the end of the day, tzadik be'emunaso yichya. That's it. The Gemara goes weiter. I'm going to go see. Brother Charino. Arba Gzeros Gazer Moshe Rabbeinu al Yisrael Bar Arba Neviim Ubitlam. Moshe Rabbeinu made 4 Gzeros on Klal Yisrael, and 4 subsequent prophets came along and negated them. Moshe Amar Vishkon Yisrael Betach Badad in Yaakov. Moshe Rabbeinu said Klal Yisrael should dwell all alone. Ba Amos Ubitla Shneimar Chadona Miyakum Yaakov. Ksiv Nicham Hashem Azos. So Habakkuk Amos came along and annulled it, and ultimately again Hashem agreed with Amos. Moshe Amar Ubagoyim Ahem Lo Sargia. And these nations ultimately again Klal Yisrael will not be able to find their footing. Ba Yom Yava Amar Haloch Largi Yisrael. Moshe Amar Poked Avos Avon Avos Abadim. Moshe Rabbeinu said the sins of the fathers should be visited upon the sons. Ba Yecheskel Bitla. Yecheskel came along and was Mavatal that. Hanefesh Hachotas Hitamos. No. Person sins, they bear their iniquity for their sins, but it's not passed down to their children. Moshe Amar, Va'avaretem Bagoyim. Moshe says, Klal Yisrael will be lost amongst the nations. Ba'yishav Va'omer, Va'yabayomahu, Yitaka B'shofar Gadol, Uba'a Ovde Me'eretz Ashur. Yishayahu says, Yishayahu says, Klal Yisrael will not be fully lost. Amarav, Mistafinu Mehaikra. Va'avaretem Bagoyim. Rav said, I am so scared of this pasuk that Klal Yisrael will be totally lost amongst the nations. It's not true. Just because something's lost is not a bad thing. Sometimes you lose something, and I will say what happens when you lose it? The owner constantly tries to find it. Shabbat says, so beautiful. We are lost, but here's the most beautiful thing. We're lost to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Rebbe Shalom constantly seeks to find us. Ultimately, again, even though it says, it will consume you in the land of your enemies, maybe it means, so again, maybe it's like the consumption of cucumbers and gourds. So apparently when you pick cucumbers and gourds, you don't pick all of them off the vine, but rather you leave some of them on the vine itself. So Klal Yisrael, there will be losses, but we will never be totally decimated. I both say, by the way, sometimes you see machlokes in the Gemara, and you don't see exactly how it resolves. See here, Moshe Rabbeinu prophesying Klal Yisrael will be lost, and subsequent Nevi'im, Yeshayahu, and others saying, no, not true. They davened to Kadosh Baruch Hu, they petitioned to Kadosh Baruch Hu, let Moshe Rabbeinu's Gezerah be annulled. So I will say, what happened? I just want to point out something amazing. We are living proof that the Gezerah of Moshe Rabbeinu was annulled 2,000 years after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. And look at us. We're thriving. We're sitting here in the Beis HaMikdash learning Torah. We're sitting here in the Beis HaMikdash learning about Moshe Rabbeinu's Gezerah and Yeshayahu's annulment of it. And again, and if there's no greater proof that we are not lost, then look at us. Look at us. We are the proof to the nitzchus eternality of Klal Yisrael. We are proof to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the shepherd, is looking for us, the flock, every single day. We are not lost. We know what we have to do. We know where we have to go. We know what we have to become. We're not yet there yet, but we are the sheep looking for the shepherd, and the shepherd, the Ribbon Shalom, consistently and constantly every day is looking for us. Incredible. Let's say, here we go. End of Maseches Makkos. A story. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Akiva were all walking together on the road. They heard the celebrations from the Roman arena, from the arena in Rome, and it was so loud that they heard it at a distance of 120 mil. Incredible. And I will say, they obviously understood. Now, how could they know what the celebration was about? But what they felt the celebration was about was the victory of Rome and the downfall of Klal Yisrael. They began to cry. Rabbi Akiva Mesachik, and Rabbi Akiva began to laugh. Amru lo mipnei mata mesachik. They said, Akiva, why are you laughing? Amru lahem ve'atem mipnei matem bochim. Why are you guys crying? So Amru lo goyim halalu shemishtachlim latzavim umekachlim lavodos kochavim yoshvim betach v'hashke. How could it be that these people, right, these Ovdei Kochavim, these idolaters, that they worship and they bow down and they prostrate to all of this narishkeit, to all this craziness, and yet they live with such tranquility. Their lives are so good. Va'anu, ba'is harus, ragli elokinu sarif, but us, our Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. Ba'esh, with fire, v'lo nifkeh. So they're wrong. They're wrong. And yet their lives are so good and so tranquil. We're right. We are Ovdei Hashem, yet our Beis Hamikdash lies in ruin, and our Yerushalayim has been destroyed, and our people have been exiled. How could we not cry? Rabbi Akiva says, this is why I laugh. Ma la'orei risono, kach la'osei risono al-achas kama v'kama. If this is the joy and happiness and reward that Hashem gives to those who go against His will, then imagine the simcha that is waiting for us. Imagine the reward, imagine the light, imagine the goodness, imagine the beauty that is waiting for us. Rabbi say, Rabbi Akiva's laughter, and this is a different kind of laughter, Rabbi say. Right? It's a different kind of laughter, because remember, mitzachek, what is mitzachek? Right, what's mitzachek? The first person we see mitzachek was, right, Sari Imenu. The laughter, tzchok, is the laughter of disbelief. But not disbelief that I don't believe something is going to happen. It's like almost like this giddy type of laughter, because you are so overwhelmed, not at about what is occurring, but what will occur. Tzchok is unbridled, anticipatory happiness. It's not now, right? Not now, things are difficult, but I believe in what's going to come in the future. Rabbi Akiva's laughter was not a present laughter. Rabbi Akiva's laughter is the future anticipatory laughter of Klal Yisrael. The Shir Amalos B'Shuva Hashem Hashivasein Hayinu Kichomen. That future-oriented simcha. Right now things are difficult, but the power of the Yid is I can grab the simcha of the future and bring it to enlighten my presence. That's what Rabbi Akiva was doing. Rabbi Akiva wasn't minimized. You think Rabbi Akiva didn't see all the destruction all around him? Of course he did. Rabbi Akiva died in that destruction. Rabbi Akiva was killed in the midst of Hadrianic persecution by the Romans. Rabbi Akiva understands exactly what's happening over. He's not making light of their situation, but Rabbi Akiva is saying is the power of the Jew is to look into the future and to draw from the future simcha and bring it into your present. Rabbi David HaMelech says this also. Va'ani B'chastecha batachti yagel libi b'shuasecha. I trust that your chesed is going to come. Right now I don't see it. But I believe it's going to come. And because I believe it's going to come, yagel libi b'shuasecha, I rejoice now. That says the power of the Yid is that even when things are dark and difficult, I know they're going to be great. So I reach into my future, I draw that simcha from the future, and I bring it now back into my present. And that's what lights my way. That's Rabbi Akiva. One more story. The Gemara says, Shuv Pam, Hayu Olni Yerushalayim. One time they walked to Yerushalayim together. They were literally ascending to Yerushalayim. Kevan Sheyu Lahar Tzofim. They came to Har Tzofim. And what happens? Karo Big Dehem. I will say, now from Har Tzofim, they saw Yerushalayim, right? Yerushalayim, and they also saw the Harabayis, which was destroyed. Kevan Sheyu Lahar Harabayis. And they tore their clothing as a sign of mourning for the destruction. They continue to walk further, and they come to Harabayis. Ultimately, again, they see a fox emerge from the Holy of Holies. Everyone begins to cry, and Rabbi Akiva begins to laugh. They said to him, Akiva, how can you laugh? How can you laugh at a time like this? So Rabbi Akiva says to them, why are you crying? They said to him, Rabbi Akiva, Makom shekasuv ba v'azara karev yumas. Ultimately, again, the place that says that a non-Kohen who comes there will die. In other words, this is the Makom where no one was allowed to enter except the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. The Achshav Sholem Hilchabo, now the foxes, right? The foxen are walking around, right? The foxes are just walking around everywhere. Desolation. Below Nifke, we can't cry. Rabbi Akiva says, this is why I laugh. Let me tell you why. Dichsiv. This is one of the most beautiful Gemaras. Dichsiv. Va'idali edim ne'emanim es Uriah HaKohen ve'Zechariah ben Yevarchiyahu. So I will say, the pasuk says like this. Pasuk in Yeshaya. I will bring for you witnesses, Uriah the Kohen and the Navi Zechariah. Now the Gemara says, I don't understand. Rabbi Akiva says, V'chi ma'in Uriah eita Zechariah. Uriah and Zechariah were not contemporaries. They weren't contemporaries. Uriah b'mikdash rishon, Zechariah b'mikdash sheni. We'll say, right, Uriah was in the first Beis HaMikdash and Zechariah was the second Beis HaMikdash. So why does the Navi Yeshayahu bring them together as witnesses? Ella, Tala HaKasav Nevu'aso Shal Zechariah b'Nevu'aso Shal Uriah. Rather, the Navi goes ahead and literally links the prophecy of Zechariah with the prophecy of Uriah. What was the prophecy of Uriah? Uriah ksiv, Lachin biglalchem, Sion Sadet Techrash. Unfortunately, Uriah was the one who prophesied that Sion, that Yerushalayim will become like a plowed field. Like a plowed field. And what happens in a plowed field? Not only is there destruction, but in a plowed field, ultimately, again, any former trace of what was there is also destroyed. And what happens? So the Gemara says, Od yeshvu zekinim uzekinos berachavos Yerushalayim. And I will say, what does Zechariah say? Zechariah is one of the most beautiful, beautiful images. And his images says, Od, it'll happen again, right? It'll call Amar Hashem Tzavakos. Hashem says, Od yeshvu zekinim uzekinos berachavos Yerushalayim. There will come a time of rebuilding, and there'll come a time of redemption, where ultimately, again, old men and old women will sit together in the streets of Yerushalayim. V'ish mish'anto bi'ado me'rov yamim. And people will grow old again in Yerushalayim. In other words, it'll come back. Everything was lost, but the Navi says, the Navi Zechariah says, everything will be rebuilt, and people will grow old gracefully and beautifully in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Akiva says like this: Achlon is kamin nevu also shel Uriah, Hayisi misyare shel tezkaim nevu also shel Zechariah. So Rabbi Akiva said, I always wondered to myself, like, those prophecies are right. Yeshaya was linking them. So in order to get the nevuah of Zechariah, of the rebuilding of Yerushalayim, so Yerushalayim first has to become totally desolate. Now I see desolation. Now I see a fox running out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. No greater desolation than that. And when I see the fulfillment of the prophecy of destruction, I now know, Achshav sheniskaima nevu'aso shel Uriah, now that I see the fulfillment of the prophecy of destruction, biyadua shenivu'aso shel Zechariah miskayames. I know that the nevuah of Zechariah is going to come true as well. Now that I've seen destruction, now that I've seen literally again the fox running out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, I know with all of my heart that the prophecy for rebuilding will come true as well. Rabbi will say once again, godless of Rabbi Akiva wasn't minimized. You know, there's a concept in psychology called toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is where someone is, I'm having a difficult time. I share with someone, I'm really having a difficult time in life, and they say, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Right? Generally, if you're on the receiving end of that, what do you say? What do you? You don't usually say, what do you say? The loose translation is, shut up, right? Stop it. I know it's going to be okay. That's not what I need right now. The person means, well, toxic positivity is like, always positive. Sometimes, like, I need to mourn and I need validation in what it is that I know it'll be okay. Of course it'll be okay. That's not Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is like, it's okay. Rabbi Akiva is this profound and deep, Davidic-like anticipatory simcha. Things are so bleak, but I also know that because things are so bleak in the future, they're going to turn around. And I can reach into that future, grab some of that simcha, and bring it back to the here and now. I can do that. And if you can reach into your future and bring back some of that future simcha to a dark and bleak present, That's the only way you get through. Because the only other alternative is to lose yourself in the suffering, is to lose yourself in the sadness, is to lose yourself in the darkness. Rabbi Akiva teaches us ultimately how to reach into the future, which is going to be beautiful and bright. Take hold of some of that brightness, bring it back into a dark present. And they said to him, Akiva nechantanu. Akiva nechantanu. Rabbi Akiva, you have consoled us. Rabbi Akiva, you have consoled us. And Rabbi say, those words are not just simply true for that particular episode. Rabbi say, these words are Rabbi Akiva. This mindset, this approach, this mahalach has been a source of consolation for Klal Yisrael throughout the ages. What gets us through the harshest periods of darkness is the ability to be like Rabbi Akiva, to reach into a future that we know is going to be beautiful and bright. Grab some of that brightness, grab some of that light, and bring it back with us here to illuminate a difficult present. Akiva nechantanu, Akiva nechantanu. Rabbi Akiva has always come through for us, and he always does come through for us. We'll say, Hadron Allah, Chilin Alokin, Uslikala Maseches Makkos, we'll say, Shkoyach and Mazel Tov. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone. Mazel Tov to the Chevron Eretz Yisrael. An acute good night of Shabbos. We should celebrate all of our future Masechtas together. Yerushalayim, Happy New Year. Tosis? It's not Tosis. It's one of the other Balei Tosis that changed over the year.
No, in the book. We didn't know them. The big one right there.